Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Nielsen programming session. Very exciting stuff. My name is John Miller. I'm a Vice President of Audience Insights with Nielsen, which means I get to play with data. I know a lot of you in the room. It's great to see you. Thanks for having us down to CRS this year. It's a really big thrill to be part of the 50th anniversary. So today, I'm going to talk to you about continuous diary measurement. So for all of you programming in diary markets, this is a big sea change. This is the biggest measurement change Nielsen has made in a decade. We are transforming the way that our diary markets are measured and reported to monthly reporting. So we're getting a big upgrade when it comes to speed of data. So I'm going to walk you through that today, answer your questions, and I urge you to please ask questions when it's time for that. There's a lot we don't know about this new service, and we're here to learn together. The subject of today's presentation is how to program in an always-on world, because that's what we're heading towards, right? Monthly data, year-round measurement means we're always on, just like the PPM markets. So let's go ahead and dive in, and I'll give you a quick spin through how this is going to work. We are in an always-on world because at Nielsen, we measure total audience. That's our flagship insights report that you may have seen. We release it once a quarter, and it rolls up everything Nielsen does. TV and digital and devices and smartphones and tablets and radio. And what you find is what we all know. We spend a whole lot of time consuming media every single day across a lot of platforms. It's about half of our waking hours are spent using media through something, through your phone, through your radio, through your device. That's the always-on world that we live in today. When you look at what platforms reach the most Americans, this is where radio is still at the top of the list. I had a session this morning and we talked about this in that panel, how radio reaches more Americans every week than anything else. That's the built-in advantage, you know, the original audio medium, the original social media, if you want to call it that. That's what radio is. 9 in 10 Americans listen to radio every single week. That's more than use TV, more than use smartphones, although smartphones is catching up, and more than use all the other things on this list. That's the always-on world that we're in today. I know that if you're in this room, you're probably in a diary market where technology maybe looks different or feels different from what you hear and see from the large markets, and you hear from the coastal markets and the big urban areas. But everybody has technology, everybody has devices, and as I said, we all use a lot of media every day. That's why things are always on. Audio is like that too. There's never been more audio consumed in the history of mankind than right now, between radio and streaming and podcasts and everything else that exists. And so many devices and so many new technologies that give us more ways to listen. That's the always-on world, and that's the world that your audiences live in. No matter where you program, whether it's market number 1 or market number 240, people have a lot of choices of where they're going to listen to get their audio. So when you think about how audio looks, what the audio universe looks like, you've got radio at the top. Streaming audio on a smartphone is catching up. You've got satellite radio and tablets as well. Again, the built-in tonnage of radio is very important here. That's one of the big advantages, I hope one of the big takeaways that you can all walk away from Nashville with this week is that radio still reaches a whole lot of people. The time they're spending is changing, and the number of other places they're listening is changing, but right now, that audience is still there, and that's a very important thing. And that's one of the reasons why we need faster data. We need data every month. You, as a programmer, need to get a better read on your stations as opposed to once a quarter or a rolling 3-month average through Arbitrons. Those things are all great, but the advanced world we live in today with advanced analytics and marketing mix models and all that stuff, that demands faster data. That's what continuous measurement is here to do. So a quick hit on why we're going down this road. Why are we changing the diary method to give you continuous measurement and monthly reporting? Well, if you haven't been following, there's been a lot of stuff in the radio trades in the last year about how certain companies, certain big global brands, Procter & Gamble in this case, are suddenly spending a whole lot more money on radio than they used to. That's not an accident, right? That comes from the total audience data. That comes from the insights that show that radio reaches more people and it can do it more effectively and more cheaply than TV. Companies like that need that scale. They need everybody to hear about their message. That's why they are spending more and more money in radio. At the same time, Nielsen, we think that one of our jobs is to sort of evangelize this, to explain to the marketplace the advantages of things like local advertising and where radio fits inside that model. All of this comes back to the fact that the advertising community wants credibility. The digital platforms that didn't exist 10 years ago, that exist today and take money from radio and from everybody else, they have overnight data. They have data all the time. They are inundated with data. Continuous diary measurement is going to give us more credibility and more data and more leverage, ultimately, with those advertisers. So a couple of quick points on why we're going down this road. I've touched on a couple, but here they are. It's quicker. You're going to get monthly data, so you can monetize the changes at your station on a faster basis instead of waiting a quarter or 3 months. You can also recover faster from bad books, let's be honest, right? That's a huge perk for people that program, right? You're not stuck with or saddled with a bad book for months and months. You'll have new data in 30 days. This also helps assure better advertising results because those buys are not based on historical data. The point I was just making about current data, fresh data, always changing in the models, that's what this is after. Ultimately, this helps position radio on a level playing field with the competing media that already have this kind of stuff. Now, you might also be saying, all right, that's great, Nielsen. We like new data. Everybody likes more data. That's the world we live in. But why not go away from the diary, right? We have PPM. We have electronic measurement. We have digital measurement. Why are we staying with the diary? Well, there's a couple of reasons why, the first of which is cost, right? The diary is the most reliable, consistent, portable, user-friendly, and cost-effective way to measure smaller markets. The diary captures the habitual nature of radio use. Most diaries that we get back, in fact, we mail out over 1 million diaries a year at Nielsen. Think about that for a second, 1 million of them each year. We use more than 600,000 in our samples, so it's not a small number. Among those diaries, the average person listens to 3 to 4 stations a day. Radio listening is habitual. Look at your habits. Look at the way you use it. The diary does a good job of capturing that. So for now, for the current status, the diary is the way to go. And we feel that going to continuous measurement is the best way to get more data, get fresher data, and not have to bear the cost of upgrading to electronic measurement. Right? PPM is wonderful. It is great. For those of you that program in PPM markets, you know how much data you get and you see, but that is a very, very expensive service. So for now, for 2019 and beyond, we are going to move to monthly reporting out of our diary system. If anybody needs trouble sleeping tonight or needs help sleeping or you're having trouble at night, we've got a whole handout about why the diary. If you want to read it, let me know. I've got it. It's scintillating reading, I can assure you. But it does lay out why Nielsen truly believes the diary is the best way to measure medium and small markets going forward. All right, continuous diary measurement, as I've mentioned, is about year-round measurement with monthly reporting. For all the markets, right, what this will mean is 12 releases a year. That's monthly data. We're going to expand from the current setup, which is either twice a year or 4 times a year, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. We're going to spread our existing sample across the 12 months, so the weighting will be a little bit different. I'm going to talk about that too. As I mentioned, it's monthly reporting with rolling samples, whether it's 3, 6, or 12 months, and we need to have 1,000 minimum in-tab to go currency. So our goal is to eventually expand this to every single diary market in the United States. There's more than 200 of them around the US. Right now, Wave 1 begins this summer in the 4-book markets. So the benefits that we've been speaking about, you can see on the screen here. It's more timely. It helps align the media measures, particularly with competing media, and it's more stable, right? Spreading out the sample and reporting each month will actually bring more stability to the ratings than we currently see. That is, of course, a big issue. For most of you in the room that program in diary markets, you are all used to the frustrations of the wobbles. And while I'm not sitting here saying wobbles will cease to exist, spreading the sample out and doing monthly reporting will make things more consistent. So phase 1 launches in July. We have 46 markets that get 4 surveys a year right now. Here they are on the map. As of July, you will be moving to continuous measurement and monthly reporting. Once we do that, we will have 93 different markets. That's the 48 ppm markets and the new 4-book markets that I just described. We'll have almost 100 markets nationwide that get monthly data. That is helping to put radio onto a more even playing field when it comes to competing for dollars in today's advertising age. So here's a visual. It's a little bit dense and complicated. I will walk you through it that tells you about how this is going to work. So at the top is what we do now. Again, only for 4-book markets. So if you're in a 2-book market, this looks different. It won't be quite the same, but this is what the 4-book markets look like today. Currently, you get 4 quarterly reports, winter, spring, summer, fall. And then in between is Arbitrons, right? Those rolling 3-month samples that give you the current 3 months, then the next 3 months. Well, in essence, what continuous diary measurement is going to do, it's going to take the Arbitrons model and make it the currency. So you're going to get every month a book that is the current 3 months. And it's going to come out every 30 days. So the spring book is your last quarterly survey. Once we go beyond spring, that's when we begin continuous diary measurement. The May, June, July book. Now you may be wondering, what are we going to call these books? And it's going to match ppm. So it's going to be called the current month. So for example, when you get the first book of continuous diary later this summer, it'll be called the July book. And then 30 days later, you'll get the August book, and then the September book, and so on. But it'll be based on the current 3 months. I've mentioned ppm a couple of times, and I think that there's some really, really good learnings that we can take from the bigger markets and apply here. We know in the diary world that durations or long listening occasions are the norm. ppm has proven for a decade that that's not quite how people use radio. People tend to use more stations more often in shorter bursts. So it's important for us to remember as diary programmers that just because we have different surveys that tell you different things, people do use radio in short bursts. So thinking about that and understanding the way to program to that and the way to really focus in on the key content, I mean, that's a really important thing to know. That's a very important thing to understand with continuous diary measurement. And unlike the past, you're going to get new data every 30 days now to see how it's going. If you're making a change or you're making an adjustment or you're trying to cut down on clutter or whatever you want to call it, cut down on things that you don't believe move the needle with your audience, now you're going to have a very quick look at how that's working. Really what it comes down to is in the modern media world, in the always-on world, the number of times that you do something or you consume something, that's really what matters. Years ago, I think it was 10 plus years ago, I saw the head of Starbucks marketing, talk about how Starbucks markets, like what they do and what their plans are and what they look at. And they said, coffee sales is made up of 2 things. The size of the coffee cup you buy or the number of cups of coffee that you buy. And what Starbucks cares about is the number of cups they can sell you. They are not in the game to sell you a supersize or get a bigger or something like that. They're about getting you to come back and buy more cups of coffee. Come multiple times a day, come multiple days a week. I heard a stat that something like 70% of all of Starbucks' revenue come from people that visit 4 days or more a week. How many of you go to Starbucks 4 days or more a week? Oh man, really? All right, a couple of us. Do you shake, sometimes, like if you don't have the afternoon caffeine rush? Anyway, the point is, guys, the number of times you consume, that's what moves the needle, and that's what we've learned from ppm. That's where the occasions buzzword comes from, right? The number of tune-ins, the number of occasions, because people are going to tune out. the commute's going to end, the phone's going to ring, they're going to put on Pandora, they're going to do a million other things that include not listening to your station. How do you get them back? How do you have a strong enough brand and serve them well enough for them to come back, for them to make sure that radio is part of their daily diet, just like Starbucks wants you to come in every day and buy a cup of coffee. It's the same concept. So I think those are some of the learnings that we've had from PPM that we can begin applying here. You're still going to see long listening times in diary because it's a diary, and that's what people write down. Human beings, when you give us a piece of paper, we always overestimate what we're doing. It's just the way we work. It's the way our minds work. But the reality of it is we use a lot of stations, we have busy days, we're bouncing around. So getting them back, driving more occasions, that's very important. Okay. I'm going to launch into a couple of frequently asked questions because we've been getting them already from our clients. I know we're going to get more. I'm going to take you through a couple of the key ones here, show you a couple more things, and then we'll also open it up to live Q&A. And hopefully I've done my job well and anticipated your questions. So let's go through a couple of FAQs about this service. Number one, when does it begin? After the spring book, the May, June, July book, which releases in mid-August. So starting in August, you will begin your monthly parade of data. Every month you're going to see data now, just like in PPM markets. What will these new books be called? What will these new books be called? Excuse me. Well, they'll all be named for the final month in the trend, as I mentioned. July 2019 will be the first book, then August, and so on and so forth. So don't be confused. You're not getting 1 month of data. You are getting 3 months of data named after the latest month. That's the way it's going to work. And it's going to match, by the way, the release dates and sort of the survey schedule that you see in the PPM markets. So any of your friends or brothers or cousins or uncles that program in PPM that have been talking about every month and they tape these big survey schedules to their cubicle wall, that's going to be you now too. You're going to get data every single month. Don't be afraid. More data is good. It's good for us. It can be intimidating, but more data makes you a better programmer. It helps you make better decisions on your station. It helps you build your brand better, in my opinion. Is there going to be a holiday book? No. Continuous diary measurement will have 12 monthly reports. We will survey 48 weeks of the year. There are 52 weeks in a year, so there is going to be one gap, the holiday period. There will not be a survey or data during the holiday period, but the rest of the year will all be covered. So the next logical question that I think is, does this mean everyone is going to take vacations at the same time during the holiday dark period? And the answer is probably. It's your call. I'm joking a little bit, but the only time of year you're not going to have data or survey is during the holidays. The rest of the year, it's game on. I was speaking about survey schedules a minute ago, and here you go. Here's what they look like. And you're going to have copies of these. These will be available to you via your Nielsen Answers login. You'll be able to have all this stuff, easy to print out and look at. But you'll have survey schedules that show you exactly what is what. And on the left side there, you can see the July book is May, June, July. It runs from April 25th to July 17th. And on the right is the release schedule. It releases in mid-August. So that right there is a really big change, right? You have currency level data, fully weighted, fully acceptable, every demo, the whole thing available to you every single month. You're only about a month away, meaning a survey is going to end and then it's going to release about a month later. So that right there is a huge upgrade from the way we've done it for decades with diary. Noon local will be the release times, right? You'll get all that on your release schedules, but that's the way it's going to look like. So get ready for a lot more data coming your way from Nielsen. All right, a couple more FAQs and then we'll go live. And I believe we have mics up at the front, so feel free to gather your questions and bring them up. What happens to Arbitrons? So I mentioned Arbitrons a couple of times. Arbitrons, for those of you that are not aware, is the in-between service. In between the 4 quarterly books, there's the Arbitrons data. And Arbitrons will continue to be available. Continuous diary measurement is not mandatory. You don't have to go to continuous diary measurement. You can stay with 4 surveys a year and Arbitrons. But the point I made earlier is that those 3-month reports, that's going to become the currency. So what was Arbitrons in the past, stuff that we look at and we say, well, remember, it's just Arbitrons and the weighting changes and it's not every demo and all these things, that's going to become currency, right? Every 3 months, you've got currency data. Excuse me, every month, you've got currency data made up of 3 months of sample, all right? So Arbitron stays around. Continuous diary measurement is a next level. It's another step beyond what Arbitrons does. Will Arbitrons differ from what we see in continuous diary measurement? And the answer here is no. It is going to match the currency reports, but it will only have limited demos and day parts. So this is where it gets a little bit technical, a little bit in the weeds, but come July, what you see in Arbitrons and what you see in the currency data is going to match exactly. Each book is going to be a 3-month average, plain and simple. There's a whole lot of stuff in the background here about weighting that I don't want to bore you with, but the bottom line is that what you see in Arbitrons is going to match what you're going to see in the currency data. The difference is going to be if you have Arbitrons, you can only run limited demos, you can only run limited day parts, and it's not currency. Arbitrons has never been the sales currency that agencies get, that people transact off of, and that's going to remain the same. The currency that will run in things like TAPSCAN and will run through schedules and will be given to agencies, that's going to be continuous diary measurement. How about PD Advantage? Is that going to change? No. It's just going to have monthly data, which is great. So you'll have new data to look at inside PD Advantage every single month, including diary comments. So every 30 days now, you get to look at a fresh batch of diary comments. And the same thing applies for things like the MRI reports, for those of you that know what that is. Those are the monthly raw diary reports that you can get. All that stays the same, right? All of that just comes available each month. That's part of the rollout of continuous diary measurement is all the products that you now have, that you now use, all remain in place. You just get more data. 12 months of data. And last one, what about me, right? What about smaller 2-book markets? What's happening to us? Well, our intention is to roll continuous diary measurement into every single diary market in the US. So we have begun work on phase 2. What I'm talking to you about today is the first phase, come July, for the 46 4-book markets that exist today. We are planning for how to bring this to the smaller markets, and that will have a goal of 50 more markets that are 2-book with at least 1,000 in-tab sample. I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but we are working on it. That is the next plan in the phase. We do not intend to just put this in the 4-book markets and then forget about the rest of you. Our goal is to put this into every single diary market in the US over the coming years. Fresher data makes better decisions. That's the key takeaway from continuous diary measurement. So I have 5 minutes to go. I covered hopefully a reasonable amount of FAQs. Fire away. What else do you want to know?
I have one question for you.
Hi.
What about those in those markets that don't have at least 1,000 diary samples? Our market in Indiana, in currently spring and summer, non-rated market, our sample size is 53. So how are you going to do anything, if at all, to correct that so we can use some of that data? Because we don't subscribe to Nielsen because with a 53 sample size, it's way too small. It's less than 1/10 of 1% of our total county population.
Right.
So we can't use that data. It's irrelevant to me. So is there any plan to do anything for the rest of us after those 1,000 diary samples, those below that?
Yes, in the long term, because Nielsen is considering all the ways we can bring more data to all of our clients. It sounds like you might be a county coverage client, maybe, or something?
We are county coverage, yes.
Exactly. That's not currently in this plan, but we are trying to evolve our measurements. So the answer is, I don't know, but we're thinking about it. Meaning, I don't know when it'll happen, but we want to make it happen.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Good question.
I have a question about sample sizes. Are you planning to change those sample sizes or just spread it out over a longer period? And what methods is Nielsen using to incentivize more sample?
Okay, the question was, are you doing anything with sample size, and are you also changing the way you sample and the incentives? The sample sizes are not changing. We are spreading the sample across the 12 months, so the sample size itself will not change. One of the things we've been working on is trying to improve our representation, trying to make sure that our 18 to 54-year-old sample is as good as it can be. Traditionally, what often happens in diary is we have a whole lot of sample that's 55 plus, and that's great. 55 plus uses a lot of radio, but that's not the buying demos, right? That's not what advertisers look at. So we have made a lot of steps over the last few years to try to get our 18 to 54 representation as strong as it can be, and it is good. It's getting stronger. As for other things like sample treatments and incentives, we're always working on those because it gets harder every single day to get people to do anything, right? To fill out a diary, to carry a PPM. That's why Nielsen spends more money and more time each year trying to make those things happen. Hope that answers your question.
So I have a question concerning our stations. We live in the Birmingham book, but the Metro is surveyed 4 times a year. But the TSA, where 100% of our listeners are, is only surveyed in the spring and the fall.
Right.
So we won't get zeros rolled in all through the summer and the fall, I would assume. Or how would that affect us?
Right, so the question here, I believe, is about TSA, which is the total survey area, things outside the metro. And I'm going to read off my FAQ list that I have prepared to answer your question. So the answer is, in phase 1 markets, the DMA and the TSA will be continued to reported during the spring and fall surveys. So you're still going to have that survey done twice a year. So that's not going to change, to answer your question. Good question. I think we have a couple minutes left, guys. A couple
I
more.
have a question.
Sure.
I know you said it's in the weeds, but I don't know if I completely understand the difference between what we're getting now in a 4-book market on the Arbitrons and what we'll be getting. Every month we get Arbitrons. How is that going to differ? Just that we're allowed to sell it and use it? And
Simply yes. So the question is, what's the difference between what we get now in Arbitrons and what we're going to get come continuous diary measurement? Yes, you did explain it pretty well. Continuous diary measurement is currency. You can sell it. You can run schedules on it. Arbitrons, you will not be able to.
so we've just got permission now? But the
Sorry?
methodology's the same and the sample's the same, but we have permission to sell it now. Will there be more demos or will it just be 18 plus? Or
So Arbitrons, the same demos you have now, that's unchanged, meaning Arbitrons is still a limited number of demos and a limited number of day parts. Continuous diary measurement will have everything. Every demo, every day part is granular as you want to get it. See me afterwards. There's some sort of in-the-weeds stuff here about waiting that I'm happy to talk to you about that the rest of you might fall asleep during. So come see me afterwards. Good question. I think we have time for 1 or 2 more if anyone has any. Okay, well, I think they took it off the screen. My email was up there. Please send in questions. We're sort of going through this together. I appreciate your attention and your time asking questions. And I think it's going to be a great thing for our diary markets to get more data. And next year, we'll come back and talk about what we've learned. What have we learned from a year of continuous diary measurement? But if you have questions, send them in to myself, your Nielsen rep. I appreciate your time. And now, enjoy Jason Aldean. I get to say that I opened for Jason Aldean at this show. So, thanks.